distinguished members of ICAN, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen here, fellow members of this panel, good afternoon. Having said that, without much ado, I'd like to introduce the speaker, the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Tunde Fowler. He will be the lead presenter and he'll have 10 minutes to speak. We'll have Wale Abayomi of KPMG. You have 5 minutes for discussing. And then we also have Mrs. Igonikon Adekule of Templars, who will have about 5 minutes. And so together we'll have 20 and then we'll have 10 minutes for the audience. My appeal to you, for those who already have issues regarding this topic, to start writing them down and passing them forward. So that way we can take these questions immediately after we've discussed. So without much ado, Mr. Tunde Fowler, please. Thank you.
The President of Council, past Presidents, Council members, the Chairman of today's session, and other members on stage, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I believe that we're all colleagues, but I noticed they did not put my FCA after my name, which is Friend of Chartered Accountants. But I know that you understand our business, and I think that there's some things that I will skip, but get straight to the issue or for discussion. We're talking about substitution, but before we talk about that topic, we have to look at the journey and how we got to substitution and what happens thereafter. This government is a government, I believe, that listens, that feels the pulse of all citizens, and the same is in the tax area. Before substitution, we first of all had the tax amnesty, which was between the 5th of October and 24th of November 2016. This was to give all taxpayers, both within the tax net and outside the tax net, to come forward between the years of 2013 to 2015, for which we offered a complete waiver of interest and penalty. During this period, we had about 98.8 billion in terms of the amount, and 2,400 corporate companies took advantage of the first tax amnesty. This was followed very closely by VADES, which started on the 1st of July 2017 and ended on the 29th of June 2017. Also, we found out that not everyone came forward. In terms of amounts declared, it was 92.7 billion from about 5,000 businesses. But thereafter, we still noticed that quite a large number of taxpayers still did not come forward. And we got to realize and accept in the last presentation, they spoke about vision, they spoke about integrity, but I believe that there was one little item left out, and that is revenue. You may have the vision, you may have the integrity, but without the revenue, it remains a dream. Most of us here like to complain about what government has done and what government has not done. But even with the best vision and the best leadership, we still require revenue, and that revenue certainly will come from taxes. You play a very important role in this cycle. Without you, without chartered accountants, it will be very difficult to ensure that the adequate taxes are being paid. We're talking about corruption. Corruption is not only when you do something wrong, but sometimes corruption also borders on when you do nothing at all. When you review the books that are brought to you, when you do your own internal assessment as to what your clients should pay? Are you truthful? You drop accounts that you find out that they're not ready or willing to do the right thing. I'm sure all of you do know the powers of the FIRS from the Establishment Act. And when I was going through that act, I was quite alarmed at the amount of power, when I say power, of the things that they could do to you and I. But after granting and giving 2 tax amnesties, to find out that a lot of people still had not come forward. We have to also realize that the revenue collected by the FIRS is distributed between the 3 tiers of government: federal, state, and local government. To date, well over 30 states still rely on that monthly collection. Without that collection, you can imagine what life would be in those states. We're all here for this conference, and I'm certain that chartered accountants came from all states of the Federation. If in your state we were not able to support your revenue drive, what level of security would you have in your state? I remember once I went on a speech in a West African country, and I was asked to come and encourage tax compliance. And I used a very simple example, an example that I'd used in Lagos, an example that you and I may not have thought about until, under the Joint Tax Board, I went on a visit to a hospital in Lagos. And the nurse complained about the high infant mortality rate of children under 5. And I asked what was the main cause: malaria. So we have malaria medicine, yes. But I found out on that visit that for children, when malaria gets to a certain stage, it is irreversible. It is almost impossible to save that child. And the cost of that medicine for prevention is 2,000 naira. There are people in this country that do not have 2,000 naira to treat malaria. Some pray, some hope that the fever will break, but for a lot, they have no choice. They lose those children. They lose potential presidents, they lose potential political leaders, they lose potential inventors, etc., etc. The list is endless. But with 2,500, you could save a life. So for those books that you look at, think about it. If you looked at those books correctly, for every additional 1 billion or 2 billion or 5 billion that is collected, even if you go by the sharing ratio of 52% to federal government, your state and your local government will get the balance. 1 billion naira could build a first-class medical center. 1 billion naira could build 10 medical facilities in every local government in most states. That is the impact that you have. That is the power that you have. Now, what does the FIRS Establishment Act say? All of you will get this presentation, but what I'll read basically is just from section 31, 1 to 4, but I'll just read 1 and 2. The service may by notice in writing appoint any person to be the agent of a taxable person if the circumstances provide in subsection 2 of this section make it expedient to do so. The agent appointed under subsection 1 of this section may be required to pay any tax payable by the taxable person from any money which may be held by the agent of the taxable person. That is the key points there. If you are appointed as an agent and you do have funds and there's a tax liability, you may be required to pay on behalf of that defaulting taxpayer. But also, it goes further on, and I'll come to the next point further on. But let's look at whether FIRS can substitute without notice to taxpayers. If you look at, by the combined reading of section 81G, section 31 of the FIRS Establishment Act and Section 55 of CETA. The FIRS does not require additional notice to a taxpayer before exercising its right of substitution. Now, we do not necessarily follow through with that. We do advise, we do notify, we do have stakeholder engagements to even let them know what we're doing. Now, in terms of tax administration, we're talking about convenience, we're talking about reducing cost. So what we have decided to do is to use that method of substitution. When we substitute your account, we put a layer on your finances, but we don't stop your production. You can be a manufacturing concern, you can have your legal practices. Instead of stopping your business, we stop your bank account, and that will make you come forward. Now, let us look at what has happened. If you look at the chart here, in terms of non-compliant businesses, we had over 44,293 non-compliant companies. Now, these are companies that had annual banking turnover of 100 million and above, annual 100 million and above. Some with no tax ID, some with a tax ID but no payment. We have had discussions with 3,900, less than 10% of these, and those 10% have already paid 97.7 billion naira. You can imagine the amounts of money still outstanding from businesses operating within this economy, within this society, making income and profits, and yet not willing to support the same society in which they live. Let us look at the issue of this from another perspective. Now, we looked at the banking turnover for even companies that had 1 billion naira and above, for which we had close to 3,000. I'm going to jump a few of these things, these are just charts, but if you look at the breakdown, we had 2,980 of these accounts. We've had agreements with just 594, and they paid 41 billion. For those between 100 million and 1 billion, we've had discussions with 3,203 out of 34,000, and they paid 47 billion. You can imagine what impact or effect that revenue would have as it's being distributed among the three tiers of government. Our special tax audit has been on the increase because we honestly did find out that either the businesses did not declare truthfully to you or did not give you their true financials, because I believe that all members of ICAN here present who are involved in this business will not tolerate or encourage wrong financials to be presented to the FIRS. But let's look at under the special audit. Out of 406 companies, 74 of them have paid 4 billion naira through substitution. If you look at it as a percentage, just 15%. If we look at the next, under these, that is those who came on their own to declare on their own, still were not willing to come forward to even pay what they even declared that they owe. Out of the outstanding balances, we have about 800 companies that had declared. 79 of them had paid 3.84 billion after substitution. Special investigation. We had 351 companies. 47 of them have paid over 2 billion naira. So now if you look at what's our way forward, what the law actually does say is that we have the power to actually go after the owners of those businesses. And if they have money in any bank accounts in Nigeria, we will put a lien on those individual bank accounts. So basically, what are we doing? We're working together to ensure that we build and leave behind a Nigeria better than we met it. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know this was the presentation for 25 minutes, and thank you very much for your time. Just to summarize, the Chairman has spoken about the journey started with the amnesty, giving taxpayers an opportunity to voluntarily come forward, and not many people took advantage of it. He talked about 2 such programs, not many people came forward. He talked about how revenue is critical, and referred us to Section 31 of the FIRS Establishment Act, combined with Section 55 of the Companies Income Tax Act, that gives FIRS, in his words, the power to do what they're doing. Again, in his words, even though they have those powers, they have engaged stakeholders that have notified and still have not had taxpayers come forward. He talked about the fact that in taking advantage of those powers, they really are not stopping the business, they are only putting it again on the bank accounts. On this note, I'd like to call on Dr. Obami to please give us his own views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to stand on existing protocols to save time. And to start with, I'd like to say thank you to the organizers for inviting me to share my perspectives on this very controversial subject. When I was given a topic, I actually didn't know that the chairman of the FRS would be the lead speaker. So I prepared some critical questions here to ask. But knowing him to be an open-minded man, I know he will not be offended, even when we criticize him. So after the session, we can still shake hands, warm up to each other, and I can walk over to his service without being denied appointments. So, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate you for your openness. Now, I've formulated 8 questions to answer to be able to determine whether the FRS had rightly been exercising its power under Section 31 of the FRS Establishment Act and Section 49 of CETA, but I don't have the luxury of time. And listening to the chairman, to me, the key issue really boils down to one question. Does the FRS have the power to place a lien or order or direct a bank to freeze a customer's account? To me, that's the question. And when I read Section 31 of the FRS Act, which the chairman also read, the key phrase we need to interpret there is, where is a tax payable by the taxable person? Okay, I acknowledge the point made by the chairman that government gave opportunities twice to taxpayers and some defaulters just didn't come forward to pay. But really that is not enough for the invocation of the power of substitution under this section. A tax-specific amount must be due and payable. And that is why the letter written to the bank must be specific as to that established liability. As a matter of fact, no bank will legally be acting in compliance with this provision without actually verifying that the liability has been established, it is final and conclusive, and it is not contested by the bank customer. There is a case of Plenary Apartments versus the FRS, where the FRS first invoked this power in 2013, and it was challenged by the taxpayer. The court ruled in favor of the FRS because in that situation, a tax liability of 46 million naira had been established. A payment plan had been agreed, but the taxpayer defaulted. So the government, the court, Federal High Court, gave a judgment against the taxpayer. That's the classic case on the interpretation and application of this provision. Therefore, where a specific tax liability has not been established, the power of substitution of the FRS under this provision cannot be invoked. And in the instances where the FRS had done this, the FRS had acted prematurely. And I have to say also that banks owe their customers a responsibility to ensure that the FRS comply with due process before obeying the directive of the FRS. So if they did not convince themselves that a liability had been determined, is established, is specific, they are not under any obligation to actually place a lien on a customer's account. If they did, they would not have been acting against the provision of the law. And there's also a Court of Appeal judgment that was given in March of this year in the case of Guaranty Trust Bank and one Adedamola. In that instance, EFCC gave a directive to Guaranty Trust Bank to embargo the customer account because they suspected some movements of money in the account which they thought was by way of money laundering. GT Bank obeyed that order of EFCC. The customer challenged EFCC and the Guaranty Trust Bank at the bank, saying that Guaranty Trust Bank did not ensure that EFCC complied with the precondition before they could ask a bank to freeze a customer's account. And that requirement is that EFCC was meant to go to the Federal High Court and obtain an ex parte order of court to freeze the account. And on the basis of the violation of that provision, the GT Bank was held liable in damages to its customer. And in this instance, even though there is no requirement for FRS to go to a court to obtain an order, there is a requirement that a tax must be payable. So in essence, if this matter gets to court, for instance, the court will interpret the provision of the law. It's FRS law. They will interpret it against you. So to a practitioner like me, therefore, if FRS wants to use that provision, a power substitution, to go after either those who are not registered for taxes or those who register who are not paying taxes, they actually have to amend that provision, because that provision can only be used when the liability has been established. And this provision is actually not peculiar to Nigeria. Other jurisdictions also have it in their tax laws. I reviewed Caribbean's General Tax Code. That is what it says. The liability must be defined and established. Kenya also the same thing. The liability must be specific, and the liability must also be known to the taxpayer that I hold the FRS this amount. But the taxpayer has defaulted to pay, and even though it has money with its banker. So it's also there. And the UK as well also have a provision similar to that as well. And in all of these cases, liability must be established. And again, taxpayers are not meant to be taken by surprises. FRS should give due notice to taxpayers, say, having assessed you to this amount and you have defaulted to pay. It's not best of judgment assessment, because if you give a best of judgment assessment, you are able to advise the taxpayer about his right of objection, particularly those who don't even know what their rights are. And unless you comply, then this liability will become final and conclusive, in which case I will invoke my power of substitution under Section 31 of the FRS Act. So, in essence, all we are saying is that no one can deny. No one can deny the FRS of its statutory power of substitution. However, there is a process that should be followed before that power is invoked. If a tax liability has not been specifically established, because the law says tax does not become payable just because I have not filed my returns. And all we're just saying is that, look, because we come to reason together, FRS should really follow that process in making any delinquent taxpayer to comply with the statutory responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Warren. Again, just to summarize, we centered this discussion on the powers of the FRS. We concluded that nobody contests the power of the FRS, but that the process should be followed. And he emphasized that a tax must be payable before the power is invoked. And even at that, due notice should be given and FRS should follow the right processes. I'd like to use this opportunity to therefore call on the second discussant. Thank you very much. Mrs. Adekule of 10+.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished members of the ICAN. I am not an accountant and I'm not a member of the ICAN, but I'm I'm a legal practitioner, and I believe I'm in good company. I'm only just going to pick up from what the last speaker said, because a lot of things dive into each other. During the presentation, Mr. Chairman, of course, mentioned the powers of the FIRS under the Act that enables them to appoint third parties, including banks, as collecting agents. Indeed, such power exists, but the powers are not at large. Mr. Chairman mentioned, I think, Section 8, as well as Section 31. If I do recall, Section 8 is the one that gives the FIRS the power to identify, trace, and freeze assets, in the hands of taxpayers or whoever is holding those money when there have been tax evasion or tax fraud. And the other section is Section 31 itself. And Section 1 itself, the part I would like to emphasize, and that leads me to what I want to talk about, is the section that talks about the fact that notwithstanding the powers of the FIRS to appoint collecting agents, as the banks, that the procedure would have to be observed. We're talking about the procedures in the Act regarding assessment. In other words, when you want to collect and you want to assess, there are procedures. And one of those procedures, critical procedure, is that the taxpayer has a right of what? Objection, of what? Of appealing or challenging any assessment you give to it. So irrespective of the powers you have to appoint the bank or any other third party as a collecting agent, you still have to observe the rule of law. And this time it is the power or the rights of the taxpayer. You cannot do anything that will somehow diminish those powers, because they are very critical. We've talked about transparency, we've talked about revenue, rule of law is also very important. And that is why, last speaker spoke about prematureness of some of the appointment of these collecting agents, because you need to at least inform, give notice, and have an authorized assessment with regards to these taxes that have become payable. I would like to look at it from the angle of whether the powers that have been exercised in itself are not excessive when we talk about placing a lien. Now, when we look critically on the provisions of the Act, there is nowhere, and I think even Mr. Chairman read out the provision. It says you may appoint a collecting agent, and you may ask that collecting agent to pay those taxes that have become payable. We know where the tax is payable. It is undisputed or final and conclusive. But apart from that, there isn't any more provisions there that gives the FIRS the power to place a lien on those accounts. Now, doing that, of course, has its implication. Mr. Chairman, with due respect, I think placing a lien actually stops the business, because how else will a company operate? We talked about salaries, talked about operating expenses, and all of that. I think that is the heart. Everywhere you go, revenue is at the heart of any operations that is being conducted. So, for me, I'm not here in totality to condemn the powers of the FIRS in doing that. But I think what we are saying is two things, or one thing. One, observe due process in the sense that one, let the preconditions that ought to take place before you do the needful, which is one, issue the assessment and bring it to the notification of the taxpayer. And then I'm not sure, these cases are here to be tested. We are very eager, we don't see anybody wanting to come out, maybe because of a lot of times nobody wants to get on the wrong side of the FIRS. In practice, we like to negotiate and sit down. So what we see is that when we do get those letters, we write, because the law also says that the notice itself that has been issued to the collecting agent will be treated as a notice of assessment. So you can have your right to object to it, and you can have your right to challenge it. So we normally would advise, okay, challenge it. And when we do that, we see that, of course, audience is granted, and most instances, perhaps the freeze is lifted. But we don't need to, put a noose around the taxman and then ask him to defend himself yet. We need to start from the other way around. So we want to put the cat before the horse by first doing what is needful, declaring and ascertaining that those taxes are payable. And then when you do appoint this bank as collecting agents, I'm not very sure that you have those powers to place that lien by freezing without a court order. There isn't any provisions in the FRS Act that talks about going to get the court order first. But there are provisions throughout, and if we have to read the FRS Act holistically, that tells you what you need to do. And even under the powers that is granted unto the FRS to appoint collecting agents, it says that you should observe those rules, which includes where somebody has a right to challenge or right to object. You must allow all those processes take place before the tax can become payable. It's not payable until after the due process, unless that is not a disputed matter. So the powers that we exercise is like the regulatory wielding a big stick, against taxpayers. And a lot of them, I must confess, when they see these things in practice, some of them do comply, some of them go back to try and adjust. So maybe in the effect we've seen some positive reaction or revenue do come in, indeed, but notwithstanding, we must observe the rule of law. We must ensure that we comply. Whatever powers that are given are not given at large. There is a scope, and when you go outside of that scope, you are ultra-virus, acting ultra-virus powers. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. The last speaker, again, I think chose similar line as Modi. Basically, that the process should be followed. Acknowledges that some revenue has been collected as a result of these actions, but that any such powers in the way they are currently exercised is ultra-virus. She also did mention that taxpayers, even though knowing that this is probably what they've been advised to do and that the law itself needs to be tested out, reluctant to test it in court. And it looks like it's something she's looking forward to if taxpayers decide to come forward. But she does admit that when taxpayers write to the FRS, they do listen, and usually the liens are removed. So it's good to hear that. Now, this now opens up for discussion. You want to respond? But before you respond, Chair, yes, you'll answer some. I did ask for papers or questions from the audience. I have not received any. So do you assume that there are no? Okay, so while we're waiting for the questions, the chairman will respond.
Thank you very much. Let me assure all my co-presenters that even after this, we will be very good friends. Nonetheless, I read some parts of the Act, but I'm very happy that they both acknowledge that those powers do exist. Now, if I read number 3, it says, where the agent referred to in subsection 2 of this section defaults, the tax shall be recoverable from him. For the purposes of this section, the service may require any person to give information as to any money, fund, or other assets which may be held by him for or any other money due from him to any other person. What we did, we said this government is a listening government. Putting a lien on the account wasn't the totality of what was expected to be done. If we follow this to the letter, the money should be moved directly to the Federation account. But we gave the taxpayer the option to also object. And also for all these defaulting taxpayers, a best of judgment was given after they refused to come forward. And I'm sure that those of you who have read the papers have seen when we published a link for people to cross-check bank by bank, names of accounts that have liens on, and I'm sure just about everybody in this room would have had some experience, because either you have more clients coming to meet you for briefs, or out of curiosity, you'd have checked to make sure your own clients are not on the list. Now also, section 49(2) says as follows: where an offense under this act is committed by a body corporate or firm or other association of individuals, every director, manager, secretary, or other similar officer of the body corporate, every partner or officer of the firm, every person concerned in the management of the affairs of the association, or every person who was purporting to act in any capacity commits an offense and shall be liable to be proceeded against and punished for the offense in like manner as if he had himself committed the offense, unless he proves that the act or omission constituting the offense took place without his knowledge, consent, or convenient. Yes. So basically, those laws are here. You will get a copy of this, and I can assure you that we have not put a lien on any account where we have not put an assessment. Every bank has an amount that is expected to be debited, and the issue here, I think, is very surprising as chartered accountants, that you would support tax evasion or non-payment of taxes. So if you're not in support of that, then I think we should encourage fellow Nigerians, fellow businessmen to do the right thing, support government, support society, and pay what is due. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me read out some of the comments. It would be nice to have this before, but I believe the chairman is listening. Well, some of them actually are different from what the chairman just said. There's a question that says, why is FIRS putting the on bank account of companies who have updated their tax returns through self-assessment and have up-to-date tax clearances? So somebody did ask that question. The chairman said they don't put it there, so it will appear that some taxpayers feel that the lien is being placed, even though they've updated their tax returns. Another question here is, I agree that there's a revenue drive from states, but most states don't have PAC anymore. So they have outstanding loans and bonds, so automatically their monthly tax sets as payment for the bonds and loans. So how will the hospitals today talk about the bills? Another, what the FI is doing to ensure that all political class members pay their taxes? Another, what the FI is doing to corrupt members? And the chairman give instance of corrupt staff and how the situation was dealt with. Another, in terms of tax revenue performance, can you evaluate the success of grades? Another, why can't FIRS reform excess withholding tax deducted to companies or pay interest on their outstanding balance at commercial rates? Can the country not return to the original provision of CETA, which pays withholding tax on certain items only and stop withholding tax on contracts and supplies? Another, what is the office doing to protect innocent law-abiding Nigerian companies that have paid company tax, but which have unfortunately had their accounts lien by FIRS, similar to the first? I think a lot of the questions are all along those lines. So one thing from these questions and comments you could deduce is that there's a recognition that there's a need for revenue, but whether the ways we're going about it will get us there. So for example, the states, you have loans and bonds that are being repaid. I think I read in Punch that the bailout loans are also going to be automatically deducted from the revenue. So Chairman.
Thank you very much. Let me try and answer you as quick as possible. In terms of the success of AIDS, depending on how you look at it, in terms of the number of taxpayers that got into the tax net, there was a double from an average of 10 million to 20 million. So you might say 8 had some level of success, but in terms of amounts, it certainly was not successful. In terms of the refund cases, we do refunds on a monthly basis, as long as you have your documentation in place. And we've actually taken this a step further with technology. We did find out that close to 40% of the amounts under dates that were declared were actually between VAT collected, not remitted, and withholding tax. And now, with a simple giving us your email address and phone number, anytime any payment is made on your tax ID, you get an alert, you can download your receipt immediately. So even if you have a contract and the withholding tax has been deducted, and you want to confirm that it has been remitted the following month on your behalf, once you don't get an alert, you certainly know that it has not been remitted. But for everyone who has applied for refunds, I can assure you that everyone is being paid their refund. In terms of protecting accounts that had liens on, yes, when you're dealing with over maybe 60,000 odd accounts, sometimes we do make administrative errors. We did have a few errors that I can count on my hands. We did write letters of apology to the account owners where there was an error, that they had more than one account. But let me also state, by law, before you open a business account with a bank, part of the opening requirements are a tax ID. And I discussed it with the Central Bank governor also. A lot of these accounts had no tax ID, were not in the tax database. And so even the banks erred by even opening the accounts. Second, for accounts that are paid, unfortunately for my legal learned person, I'm not learned, but you might have some cases, but I can assure you that no one has taken us to court on it. Whether you're a tax dodger, a tax defaulter, it's something, if I can use this word, of shame, not living up to your civic responsibilities and supporting the society in which you live. And lastly, in terms of corrupt staff, I'll put it this way. Jesus had 12 disciples. One was guilty. I have over 8,000 staff. Probably need to have a few guilty. But what are we doing? We work with AFCC, we work with the ICBC, and for staff that we find wanted, we take them through the administrative process. So, I mean, nobody can, I doubt if everybody here can beat their chest and say they don't have one bad staff in the organization. So please, give us a break, support us, and I assure you that our staff cannot be corrupt if they don't have the assistance of someone on the other side. Thank you.
Well, I think we've come to the close of this session. Let me tell you, this is my take of what we've just discussed. First of all, the FRS, under the guidance of the chair, feels that what they're doing is correct. They feel they have the powers of substitution. They feel that the way in which they are exercising those powers are correct. They believe that there may be one or two cracks, but that does not take away the totality of what is being done. And so they feel resolute in going ahead with the current practice. On the other hand, the taxpayers, represented by Wale Obale of KPMG and Mr. Debule of Templars, feel that the process and the way in which the powers that is acknowledged are there are not being properly exercised. It's difficult to come to a middle ground here. I'm reading the comments of those who are here, and actually just even listening to the resounding applauses after the two discussants spoke. My sense is that the generality of those who are sitting in the audience actually told the same line as Wale Obale and Mr. Debule.
And maybe the group that is for Wale could just keep quiet. Those for FRS, can we hear you? I'm on the FRS staff. So this is my take. It's difficult in a session like this for us to get to a close, but I believe that the reason the council and the chairman of this conference committee put this subject up for discussion is that they acknowledge it's a challenge. It's a problem that a lot of taxpayers have complained about, and if you read in between the lines, a lot of taxpayers are not happy about. And I think for that reason, perhaps alone, and to recognize that in generating revenue, it's a social contract. We need cooperation to achieve not just revenues today, but revenues for the future. We need cooperation to generate revenues in a sustainable manner. We do not want taxpayers going underground, falsifying returns, creating more temptation with tax officers and negotiating revenues that ultimately at the end of the day are to the detriment of the country. We want a system that we all are part of and we all believe in, and a system that is transparent. And if the taxpayers feel so wrongly about this, then perhaps ICAN, since this is our conference, could set up some kind of ombudsman or process for addressing issues as they come. So that way, FRS gets achieved what they want in terms of revenues, but there's a process whereby people feel that their views are being heard. And perhaps in that kind of ombudsman setting, FRS may look again at the processes that they've adopted to see how they can come up with a middle ground of ensuring that the processes that are being used truly are getting them the results that they want. And maybe let me talk a little bit about these processes, because I believe that the FRS Establishment Act would have been a very one-page act if it was just pay your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, we do a lien on your account. Then we'll need the number of pages that we had for the act. In the Act, you also have taxpayer services and the need to constantly educate the taxpayer. In the Act, you have processes for filing of returns. In the Act, you have a process where you pay taxes and you're paid refund as and when due. So at the same way we're exercising the power of FRS, the taxpayers are also exercising their rights to get their refunds as and when due. Now, I'm sure the chairman will not disagree with me to say that taxpayers are not getting their refunds as and when due. For different reasons, not necessarily the fault of anyone. It could be the audit process, it could be the way the returns are filed. So whichever way it is, it's not an immediate thing. Whether it's for the taxpayers to get their refund or for FRS to get the monies that are due to them. There's a process for filing, there's an assessment process, there's a notification. We've gone to put in the tax appeal tribunal, all recognizing the importance of a process. So with that in mind, it behoves on the FRS to think again about what's going on regarding the lien on accounts, to separate the two levels of taxpayers. Taxpayers who you've clearly established taxes are due and have not paid. Taxpayers who have not filed returns ever, because we do have that group, and have different processes for these groups of taxpayers, and then put that all there as distinct from the amnesty. Because again, he did mention that there's a journey and there's an amnesty and people didn't take advantage of it. That happens. And that reminds me of when we're putting up the laws in the National Assembly for company income tax amendments. We went all out there, stakeholder sessions and so on. As soon as the law was passed, the insurance industry came and said, oh, that there's something in the law that says we should do this. And I said, where have you all been? So these things happen. Even if you do these engagements, People don't read, people don't take advantage of it. That doesn't make it right, but it's a fact. So going forward, Mr. Chairman, the taxpayers, particularly as Mr. Adekule mentioned, the heart of their business is the bank account. You have staff who are not being paid, businesses on hold, they are hurting. Now, you don't do enforcement not to hurt, so accept that. Enforcement is to hurt, and to make people change action. So now that this has happened, I know 30 days of the 30-day suspension, perhaps we want to think again about another process, but clearly let's come and have a bridge closer to reducing this level of uncertainty. And let me read this at the end of what the taxpayer has said. What is the FIRS doing to improve its record? It is disturbing that the service could not establish and reconcile taxpayers' records so that payments made were being brought up many times, even after payments and the customer account of the bank are subjected to the lien in the bank. So basically, even if the customers are not complying, the taxpayer is also saying that FIRS is also not doing its own part of the game. So as we try and resolve both, let's understand that we still don't have a perfect system. So please, let's factor in time, let's factor in the taxpayer's consideration, let's recognize that even FIR itself is not perfect, and let's come up with a process that works for different levels and types of taxpayers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and we wish all of us more revenue for the country. Thank you.
Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together one more time. The chairman of the session spoke from both inside and outside, and we appreciate you for your knowledge and depth. Let me invite the presidency and every member of that a very esteemed group of people to please step forward here and join this team.